I was running retreats actually here, and by here I mean where I'm broadcasting from, which is Tucson, Arizona in the US. We were running retreats here. This is a long, long time ago, easily 30 years ago. It was just one of my retreat venues because originally the university, which I now work for, but back in those days, they had invited me to give retreats. And that was the genesis of the Tucson Community Meditation Center, which still exists. So in any event, one of the venues that we used before we had a center was a ranch that was owned by Doug Boyd. Doug Boyd wrote a book that was popular called Rolling Thunder about a Native American shaman. But Doug had an interesting background. He had grown up in Asia. So he always had this idea of connecting Buddhist practice to Native American practice. And he had this ranch called the Cross-Cultural Studies Center, and it was a good venue for running retreats. So we ran retreats there. And after one of the retreats, or actually at the beginning of one of the retreats, wow, I can still remember like it was yesterday, so long ago. So Doug said, I have a connection to a fully traditional Tohono O'odham Native American medicine man. And if you want, we can run a inipi, a sweat lodge ceremony for your group after the retreat. And his name is Rupert Encinas, and he's very solid. He's very friendly to non-Indians, but he's very traditional. He's the first speaker of his own language, which is very rare now to have someone who's spoken Indian language before they spoke English in the US. Is very rare. He actually is. It's like he grew up as a kid speaking the Tohono O'odham language. And Doug also said he's a pipe carrier. He's a sun dancer. So the way Doug said that, I knew it meant something important, but I didn't know what it meant. What's a pipe carrier? What's a sun dancer? So Doug explained what a pipe carrier is and what a sun dancer is. It made sense. I could see how that would, with what we were doing. So I said, you know what? Yeah, let's try it. Let's try it. So retreat was over, and they had their own sweat lodge, as I remember, on the property. Rupert had built it. It's like I think most people probably know, it's dome-shaped, covered with blankets, just regular blankets, so it breathes. There's enough air in there. And then the rocks are brought in, and you pour water on it. Can get quite intense, but it's physically safe. So that's sort of the mechanics of the ceremony. It's an interesting thing. Are you in the UK? Where are you?
I'm currently in Portugal, but I spend my time between here and the UK.
I see. So, relative to Europe, in a sense, the US is a very young culture. I mean, we have people come from Europe. I remember one of the retreats here in Tucson, we had a French girl from Lyon. You know, he grew up in a house that had been there for 400 years next to something that had been there from Roman times. You know, it's like, wow, that's history, right? And there's nothing like that in the US, but actually there's something far, far older than you can currently find in Europe, which is a continuity of shamanic practice. And when I took the French girl into the sweat lodge, I was thinking, I'm giving her the experience of going through a time, sorry, I get a little emotional, a time tunnel to experience what our ancestors of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, who knows how far back, what they experienced is still actually alive with an unbroken continuity of tradition from the Paleolithic here. And I can, because of this connection, I can provide this experience. What's 2,000 years compared to 20,000 years? We really have something old right in my backyard. Actually, it's that way. Let's go a few miles that way, and you'll be on the San Javier Reservation, which is the Ta'odam Reservation. You'll be at Rupert's house, and there's a sweat lodge there. Many more miles further that way, you'll be in Mexico. So that shows you where we're located in the world. So we did it. We did our first sweat lodge with Rupert. And wow. So he ran that one the Lakota way. There's different ways to run a sweat lodge. The Lakota way, which is standard, the sweat leader sits at the door of the lodge. In the Native American church, which is the peyote religion, which he also is a roadman in that religion, you sit in the back of the lodge. So they have, if you follow the peyote way, you do it one way. If you follow the Sioux, which they call themselves Lakota, Dakota, and so forth, the leader sits at the door. So Rupert is sitting at the door. You do the lodges usually at sundown. And we're out on the res, and there's oh no, that wasn't the res. We're out on Doug's ranch. And you look out the door, there's not even telephone wires. There's nothing. You're just looking at pristine Sonora desert. And Rupert is sitting at the door. You know, we've had a few rounds. A couple people have almost passed out, but everyone's doing okay. And he opens the door, and you know the steam goes out, and he's got his hair down. You probably know Native people often have long hair, the man, and they'll open it. So the hair's all down, and he's a full-blood Indian. He's holding his pipe, his silhouette in the sun, and his chest covered with Sundance scars. I mean, like wall to wall. Each one of those is a life and death ordeal that he went through. And I'm thinking, my God, this is just a direct window into our past. It's right here. And I remember crawling out of the lodge and, you know, it can be a little bit of a near-death experience sometimes. Not inevitably. It could be gentle, but it can be a thing. It's meant to. Well, you know how people, if they have a near-death experience, often their life turns around. Well, imagine if you sort of do that every week with a group. So, you know, there's a little recovery, sort of crawling out, and you have a feast afterwards to sort of, you know, re-embody, because you've quite literally been in the spirit world. And I remember the thought crossed my mind, oh, this is what they call, quote, primitive religion. And then I chuckled, because the primitive was in quotes, because I could see, oh, of course, a stone axe is not as good as an iron or steel axe. And given the choice, any culture is going to have a modern steel axe. But I think what the people that came from Europe, they didn't appreciate that although the material culture was, in a sense, primitive, the spiritual culture was the very antithesis of that. Those ceremonies act on every level. You can see it's a group dynamic. It's a shared experience. It's a prayer ceremony. It's a chance to allow yourself to be shamanically channeling. It's a equanimity with, I'm sure I'm going to die because this is like waterboarding, but somehow these songs are carrying me, and I'm talking to God because it's not even me anymore. To regular old psychology group therapy, someone needs to talk this through or that through. Oh my God, they figured out a structure that addresses every level of the human in one activity. And this is what they call primitive religion. So after that, every time we did a program here, we'd have a sweat lodge. And I'm sure you know that with Native people, you have to prove yourself. And the way you prove yourself is that you prove you're not a looky-loo. You keep coming back, coming back, coming back, coming back. Year after year, you keep coming back. And it gets hot and you don't complain and you don't leave. And, you know, you show you got what it takes. Then you can earn affiliation. You are a relative. You're called a relative. But it takes years and years and years. Most people aren't unless they're, you know, most people who aren't Native American aren't going to have that opportunity unless they want that opportunity. Well, my life was set up so I had that opportunity many, many times during the year. And then the connection grew and continues to this day.